Have you heard about the new tariff that's coming out on imported steel? You
No,
call that one on the news yet?
no, no.
The government have announced that they're going to put a 50% import tax or tariff on imported steel to try and save our one and only steel plant in the UK, Scunthorpe, I think it is. I understand what the government are trying to do because they're trying to save the steel industry in the UK, but that is just going to have such a major impact on all building products across the world.
They're the ones that fucking destroyed it with their stupid net zero policies.
Exactly.
Fucking
It's
morons.
disastrous because it's going to push everything out. Everything's going to go up in cost. I mean, they're talking about. I mean, I got a call from my good friend who's in the steel industry when you guys were skiing. He was saying it's gonna double costs. You know, almost double, almost 130% on the costs of steel by the summer, which is just going to cook.
I don't know how things can get more expensive. Like it is absolutely, it's eye-watering. I remember, God, we're all still so young, and now I feel like I'm talking like a pre-World War II veteran here. But back in the day, and I'm on about just before 2020, build costs were reasonable. But today they've like doubled in the space of only 5, 6 years. And I thought, and I've been saying constantly, I just don't see how this can get more expensive. Yet they just keep this April now, 6th of April. Honestly, guys, if I showed you the emails I've had from my buying team, the string of price increases, and they're not talking like 2 or 3% increases. I'm talking about 10%, 14% price increases again. And I'm like, how?
This is a tariff on top of the energy costs that haven't hit yet. This is a quota on top of the energy. The energy is going to potentially double. Trump coming out saying, we're not going to help the UK any better than anyone else. They're not helping us at the war. So buy your oil from us. We're going to get no help from them. It's a disaster, really.
I've got a good example for our listeners of the cost changes. Our first HMO on one road, which was a 4-bedroom, 4-bath, cost us £48,000 9 years ago. We're doing another HM on the same road in the same town, literally almost opposite, but down the road a little bit. There is an element of extension to be done, but it's a 7-bed, 7-bath, and our bill costs £350,000. What I don't understand is the same builder built a new build house for us for 175 grand. How can a house bash in an extension come to double that? Like it's almost cheaper to start from fresh.
Honestly, Wales is in big trouble because across Wales now with build costs, other than literally probably 5 places I can name on my hand in terms of areas, is unviable to build across Wales. Like you just cannot build for the values of what people pay, or the sales value versus the cost in terms of new build now, not secondhand stuff. It is unviable, other than still only like these 5 areas. But in those 5 areas, land is like it isn't there. You have to demolish something to rebuild. So, and not on scale. They were like individual plots. So Wales are already in a big problem. A lot of parts across England are in a similar problem. So therefore, the house building target is nigh on impossible without increased government subsidy.
So my main bag, and actually Stuart does quite a bit as well, which is commercial conversions, which is where you're taking office buildings using Class MA, which used to be Class O under permitted development, which is an easement of planning that the national government launched to enable developers to convert office buildings in great locations. So it was an incentive to help repurpose buildings. When that was first brought out in 2015, it was like the Wild West. The value from office to resi planning, so this is not even starting a construction, to resi planning was huge. Like the sites were worth 30% more just from a planning ticket. So in 2 months, people could take a £3 million building and make it worth £4.5 million in 2 months just from a planning approval. The realization that all of the costs across the board have gone up significantly, and the finance costs haven't changed that much. I would have said that back in 2015, we are probably paying like 8% blended on finance. Now we're paying 10% on blended on finance, which is 2%. But across the project, that's not a huge swing in the whole grand scheme of things. But we're now at a point, even in regions like London, Oxfordshire, where we operate, that the land value as an office is higher than what it's worth as resi, because all of the other costs have changed so much that I'm bidding on some office spaces thinking, when we get planning, it's probably worth less than if we actually just tenanted it and sold it. which is the huge, the huge cost change. And I would much rather do that, but it's much more predictable to slice a building into 20 residential flats than it is try and land a 15,000 square foot commercial lease and then sell it on. You got rent risk, and then you got exit risk as well. So it's a lot less predictable.
And commercial risk as well. The
Yeah.
commercial really don't enjoy lending against commercial buildings, where it's crazy if you've got someone, a good tenant, why would you not?
Again, for the viewers' benefit, just because we're diving into quite a lot of weeds here, and we definitely need to pick back out the issues of costs that are affecting construction and development. But just to like double down on Stuart's what Stuart said there about the tariff changes, for anyone who's not necessarily privy to the steel manufacturing sector in the UK, because we used to be the powerhouse of steel manufacturing, like the UK, particularly the Northeast, by the way, as well, because that's where you had Redcast Steelworks and a lot of the shipyards. We used to export steel across the world. We were like number one for steel, which meant we were number one as well for the military industrial complex, because steel is used in military, bridges, construction, railroads, all sorts. Steel is like such a fundamental constituent part to the modern built environment. Why did it go to shit? Because environmental standards are to bollocks. Because what we did is went, let's not pollute the atmosphere. Let's just send it to China, and China, who don't follow the same environmental standards, they'll just obliterate their own atmosphere, which
China,
for some quasi illogical reason we think doesn't also inadvertently affect ours in a global environment. Mental. So the environmental stuff, bollocks, stupid, crazy. Then it's the energy markets, net zero, making, because steel, obviously you need a lot of heat to be able to melt the steel down and turn it into new types of steel components and things like that. Nice and simple to think of. You just need lots of energy to be able to burn this stuff, and obviously to move the stuff around and to run a manufacturing plant. And net zero standards have made it nigh on impossible for most of the manufacturing sector, especially the steel sector. Then regulation, health and safety standards, all of this crazy come in to destroy the steel industry from government decisions with no logic or common sense. It's just destroyed the job market. It's destroyed our sovereignty, our national security, because we can't produce steel, we can't produce weapons, we can't build our own. We're reliant on China. Now they're saying to fix it, let's tax ourselves more, because we've only got one steel plant left because we've killed the rest of them. So let's tax the importation of steel.
Yeah, trying to permit internal steel to buy, but
which is crazy. It's like creating their own problems to just tax more out of it. It's fucking nuts.
On this podcast, we bang on about how shit planning is, and that is obviously true. But a procurement company told me an interesting fact. He was like, if planning does improve by 20%, we can't actually as a country procure the amount of materials we need to deliver any change or improvement. The Labour government, what was their target? 300,000 homes a year, or 700,000 within 3 years, or whatever it was. We're tracking at like 28% of that, or something ridiculous. We're nowhere near the target. Let's say we did track 40% on that. We can't even procure the materials for it. But this tariff, they're trying to reduce the import of steel by 60%. Can we actually sustain doing that ourselves immediately? Probably not. So then it moves into the free market. People are going to pay the tariffs to import because we need the steels. If you got a site, you're not going to wait around for Scunthorpe to be like, yeah, it'll be delivered in 3 weeks' time, and it ends up delaying the project. So we'll end up paying the tariffs. But the problem is, when we pay the tariffs, what happens to that tax once we've paid it? Because the free market will choose. You're given an option: source locally or source from China. And quite often, if it's a commercial decision, it's time and cost driven. That's typically, steel is a very difficult thing to buy a bad quality bit of steel. Like, it is what it is. It's not something that varies that much in quality.
they should use the tax.
They should use tax to
Open
steel
up
plant.
Port Talbot. Exactly that. Yeah.
It was probably something they'd done, because Tata invested 1.25 billion in Wales, the Port Talbot Steelworks down here to bring in the electric arc furnace, and I think that's meant to be operational by 2028. But obviously they've been working with the government hand in hand. So it's probably something else wider at bay that it'll coincide. The time, I bet you'll see that the timings probably coincide with when the furnace is bang up and running.
That's then Indian owned. What's the difference between a Chinese company making steel in China and shipping over to an Indian company making steel in Wales and then What's the difference?
Or regulatory standards in the jurisdiction. Like, Chinese steel was notoriously bad for a long time. It's obviously a lot better now, though. But there was a big difference between Chinese steel and British steel for a long time. A lot of bridges famously collapsed that China tried to undercut the UK steel exports to build. I think in Australia had quite a
They've
good
definitely
example.
improved.
Yeah. They're much better now. But the regulatory
They
standards.
called it bendy steel, Jack.
Yeah.
It was innovative.
I mean,
apparently.
these boys don't fuck around. Do you see that bridge they rebuilt in 24 hours? No wonder
I
the
know.
steel was a bit bendy. I mean, it probably hadn't gone off.
We are just not set up to operate on that level of speed or efficiency.
China could build a bridge with steel and then rebuild it quicker than we've even got the steel put on a trailer.
Not planning for it.
Yeah. Just think about the government's decision there, though. That the concept, and this is what's so backwards about shit government, and particularly a Labour government, because they think tax is a solution. Like you cannot tax such a like critical commodity that's required for the built environment. You can't tax it to create prosperity, to create a more of an abundance of the very material, because all that will happen is it'll make it more unaffordable for people to build, because who usually wears the cost of that tax? It's the end user, so the person who buys the building, the person who buys the railroads, not the construction person. But in a market where, back to what you were saying earlier, Jack, where it's price sensitive, all of a sudden the end user now can't buy or afford to buy, so they'll buy less, and therefore we just create a vicious cycle of less and less steel.
I mean, that's the difference between a Labour seating and something more enterprising. Imagine if the UK government went to Scunthorpe, walked into their warehouse and said, right, you lot, no national insurance on Labour, so more jobs will drive in, they can pay the staff more, and they can produce steel cheaper to be more competitive and drive business from within. China, you can crack on with that and you can deliver what you need to deliver and whatever the tariffs are. But if they gave easement into the independent businesses in the UK, not even the steel manufacturers, across the board, like they've absolutely hammered the retail space and they're trying to help that. They've absolutely hammered food and beverage and everyone's on their knees. More pubs are shutting. Construction businesses are folding. If they actually just said, I'll give you a hand here, it's a bit like if someone's got a decision, you don't punish them more for making a bad decision. You help them make the good decision, the only decision that's willing to be made. And that's the attitude problem across the board. Like, it's just a lot easier if they just, because what would go wrong if they did support Scunthorpe and said, look, we'll ease a lot of your costs so you can produce for cheaper. What they're concerned about is this business then blows up, becomes a really profitable business, and then everyone in the public eye is going, why is it easy for them? And that's the problem with the population of the UK. They're naysayers and they think everyone should be fairly earned. But my view is if you're out in the market taking risk in business, you should have the upside because you then self-promote.
But one of the biggest reasons, though, Jack, for that mentality is because we now sit at nearly half of the population being on public dime. And when you got half of the population who's on the public dime,
wasn't it that 329 billion was received in income tax and 333 billion was spent in welfare, something like that?
Yeah, well, there's the welfare side, but I just mean public sector workers, just people who are employed on the public dime, i.e., their life trajectory is I'll get paid as a civil servant, and I will never get paid more than that because there's no opportunistic upside. I don't need to take any risk. I've got a gold-plated pension, which is insolvent anyway, so they're never really going to see that. But they don't know that. And they're not contributing to any net upside in the economy. So they have no concept of what it means to make money, to make profit is a success, because what it means is you can reinvest, you can rebuild, create new jobs, you're taking huge risks, create prosperity for yourself, your family, people around you, the market. They just don't get that. So it's
What's the solution? Only taxpayers vote?
axe regulation first, because it costs nothing to axe regulation. It doesn't cost us anything. It just reduces overhead and it eases the market. Then tax is a fundamental thing we'd have to tackle. Immigration, we've got to solve that. But there's a cascading order of things we can do that we start with what doesn't cost us anything and work all the way back to addressing the tax issue, which will cost us something, and we can't spook the bond markets. But that's the fundamental thing.
How far do you deregulate?
Well, the bats can go fuck themselves.
The bats, the newts, the badgers.
All of that, yeah. I mean, they'll sort themselves. I mean, just build a little sanctuary and just put all of the endangered species in there, and then it's a free for all, right? Just crack on.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
I mean, eventually someone's going to nuke someone, and the world's going to ice age. And the few survivors crowd around a fire will be like, imagine when we used to save bats' lives. They're all gone now.
Fucking hell. Well, Stu, think of what the easiest things to tackle first. To me, the easiest regulations to tackle first are the employment regulations that have gone ridiculous, like the whole IR35 crackdown, all that. Like, it needs the economic freedom and mobility for employers and employees to be able to be meritocratically valued on their output should be an absolute fundamental necessity of the free market. And the fact that they're trying to make it impossible for you to be able to hire staff, dance around HR issues and things like that is crazy for an SME that can't afford that kind of overhead burden where a big company could. It favors the incumbent. So get rid of all of that, because we're seeing massive youth unemployment because as a direct result of it, because employers are scared to hire juveniles who otherwise might get trumped up and a bit entitled and then take them to court and sue them for this and that regulation. That's all got to go. Like, strip it back to basic fundamentals, and it won't cost anything. It won't, and it will employ more people as a direct result.
Surely we're not going to see enough impact in this government. Like, I can't see. We can talk all day long about labour restrictions, planning, funding, the affordability of first-time buyers, material costs, tariffs. We're not going to see enough material change from the existing government. So what do we do? Like, that's what people really want to hear. What do we do today? What do we walk out our front door and do differently?
The most valuable thing we can do is talk about it, because by talking about it, we understand what a new government needs to look like to come in and fix it. Like, that's
Oh yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is years away.
But we're talking about when we win the lottery, what we're going to buy. Like, it's what we're going to do today.
no, because it's not winning the lottery, though, is it? Because there's a lot of people out there who are going to support the Green Party because of all the virtuous things that they're saying they'll do for everyone. Because what they're saying is, we'll employ more people, we'll give you more jobs, and it's like, how are you going to do that? And these very detailed things that we're talking about are actually how you do it, and that only favors enterprising solutions, which are much more difficult to comprehend. That the fact that you're not just going to give young people more jobs.
Warren Buffett said it. I don't even know if this quote is true, actually, but I read it a while ago, and he said that he could fix the deficit budget himself within 5 minutes. And someone said, "How would you do that?" He said, "I would put consequences on the decision, without swearing, on the decision makers. So if they if they overspent, or if they underperform, then they would be up for re-election." And he said that would instantly change the way they make decisions. And
PDP plan.
and really, what the problem we have here, whichever party we're talking about, is our political system in itself, and the consequences for what they can say, but then what they actually do, is so misaligned to like the real world, like what would happen in a business, or what would happen as just in genuine people. Like, if even as friends, if I told my friend something, like you guys, I was going to do something, you believed me, backed me, and then I actually said after you backed me, yeah, well, I decided this now. The consequence would be I would lose my friendships, or the
Yeah.
consequence in business is I would go out of business. But in government or policies, there is no consequence.
Yeah. The actual, just quickly on that point, it was actually a law of constitutional amendment stating that his rule of view is, if the deficit is more than 3% of GDP, no re-election for sitting in Congress is his ruling, which is exactly to say slapping him on the wrist if they underperform.
I was just about to say that UK PLC is the most important business for all of our lives, right? And it's run by incompetent idiots who have never run a business. It's madness, and they think the complete opposite. If they'd done the exact opposite of what they do, we'd have a much better country to live in. Exact opposite.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like Wales. Like, Wales are behind on their housing target. So what do? They remove the only target in policy that which was TAN 1, to the mechanism to allow people to get planning. We were behind because all of our plans are delayed, and there was one that's called TAN 1, which was the 5-year housing land supply. So because we were so behind on our plans and so behind on our house building targets, they removed that one mechanism to speed it up. Rather than they removed it because they weren't happy with what developers were doing, but rather than just fixing the wording around it, they just removed it completely, and which meant that, you know, that's just the bottom line. Without consequences, without real for the decision makers, it's kind of like what people have said about planning committee. People just object to planning committee, councils object to planning committee, but and the local authority sometimes get screwed over for the costs for it when it was unjustly done. But because they've done that, because there's no personal, but if they were personally held liable for holding up the system or having to contribute towards the fine, bet you they just wouldn't step outside of that. They wouldn't be difficult for the sake of it, you know.